locations.
And I think Mr. Vasavada is there, no?
Yeah.
He's
Vasavada
is the chief guest.
You guys are going to be very busy today, so.
You think so?
Yeah, we're just going to sit back and watch you all do your stuff.
How is finishing it in 2 hours? That was my question.
Yeah, you know.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, there are too many. There are lots of wonderful projects actually, and the tracks that you've made are very interesting. So, and we know so little. I mean, let's put it at the outset that we know so little, and we get to know so much from students and the various locations they're working at and all that. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, in fact, that is always the great thing about thesis. All these different places that you get to know more about.
Right. Assimilating everything. Oh, we have architect Kalamdani here with us. Yes. Hi.
All right. Chalo, then I'll leave you guys. Enjoy yourselves. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, I have some.
Yes, Janela, we can begin.
Okay. Are we ready to start, Mamta?
Yes, Anaya. Go ahead.
Yep. Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third edition of the Urban Dialogue at Kamala Raheja 2022. We've been doing this for the past 3 years, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we are doing this in an online mode. I would like to welcome all the esteemed panelist guests that are here with us today, all the students from the participating colleges. We'll be hosting 4 colleges other than the students at Kamala Raheja. And now I'd like to introduce Janella George. She's the assistant professor at Kamala Raheja and also the curator for the exhibition at Urban Dialogue. Over to you, Janella.
Thank you, Sanaya. The Urban Dialogue, organized by the Kamala Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture, was initiated in 2019. We are in the third cycle now. And this seeks to enable a discussion between professionals, students, and recent graduates to offer new perspectives to the ongoing discourse on the future of our cities. The city itself is a fragmented world, and inquiry into its spatial relations is essential for a holistic understanding of its forms and processes. Often the discipline remains incognizant of practices through which diverse groups of people on the ground actually claim, inhabit, and transform their built environment. This brings to the forefront the demand for an engagement at multiple scales, as well as experience, intuition, local knowledge, symbols, etc. This challenges urban practitioners to expand their creative universe to express and to provoke a public dialogue on possible and probable futures. The participants for Urban Dialogue 2022 are master's graduates from 5 institutions: CEPT University Faculty of Planning, Rizvi College of Architecture, MES's Pillai College of Architecture, VIT's Padma Bhushan Dr. Vasant Dada Patil College of Architecture, and Kamala Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture and Environmental Studies. These theses are organized under various themes, and they will form the basis for reflection and discussion for today's event. Our panelists today are Kiran Kalamdani, Tapas Mitra, and Vidya Mohan Kumar. And each of them have been actively interrogating and engaging with issues, questions, and contexts of the urban and their impact on different scales through their respective research and practice. I now invite Manoj Parmar, Director of the KRVIA, for the Director's Address.
Morning, everyone. I think all the panelists know perhaps each other well. We have Kiran Kalamdani, urban designer, conservation. We have Kumar, designer. We have Kapus Mitra, urban designer. We have interacted separately on a different platform, but I think it's good to have you all together on this occasion. We initiated this urban dialogue 3 years back with the very clear mind that we need to create a forum where we discuss contemporary research work. In that way, this is not a jury, this is a discussion. We are going to really elaborate the relevance of students' research in contemporary urban processes. What are the new ways this research could be steered, and what are the ways in which this can be relevant to our context. So this urban dialogue series is not just KRVI in that way. We are the host, but we are inviting people from DY Patil University, Pillai College. We have RISV, we have PVP Pune, and I think this time CEPT has sent the entries. So it's a variety of work and seeing the relevance of research across a different terrain. And also we were very clear that we want to break this discipline barrier, and bring people from various backgrounds. So we have been trying to bring landscape planning, urban design, urban conservation, things like that. So try to bring blur these intricacies and see the larger urban discourse as a one kind of a monolithic kind of a conversation. So we hope that today's event would be really generating some new ways of looking at it, and a new path through which the thesis could be explored and made it relevant to our context. Thanks. Thank you very much. Over to Janella.
I now invite Ainsley Lewis, the Dean of the Postgraduate Department, Urban Design and Conservation, to speak about the master's program at KRVIA.
Thanks, Janella. Since its inception, the Upanagar Shikshan Mandal's Kamla Raija Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture and Environmental Studies focused on critical thinking so as to locate appropriate architecture in relationship to the context. The architectural inquiries that are a preamble to urban imperatives and urban questions are often regional issues. The Institute reinforces such interdependencies and relationships with the urban. The formulation of the urban design and architectural urban conservation postgraduate programs are an extension to this underlying philosophy. They are designed as advanced systems of the production of architecture and urban knowledge. There are three attributes that set us apart as a school owing to the pedagogical approach that distinguishes the master's program. Firstly, several courses of the two streams of urban design and architectural urban conservation are conducted simultaneously for both the programs, with deviations for specialized aspects of the respective streams. This broadens the perspective and is reflected in the final dissertation projects. Secondly, the importance of a theoretical premise to understand the urban context. We have instituted a 3-year cycle based on a particular theme. We have just completed the cycle based on the theme resilience. Studio and lecture courses revolved around this to understand the theoretical positions appropriate to our context. With this academic year, we will be focusing on infrastructure urbanism. This thematic framework, based on contemporary international discourses, catalyzes the creation of knowledge specific to the global south. Thirdly, the emphasis is on academic writing so as to hone the skills to structure train of thought so as to disseminate precise arguments with the ability to present data, draw conclusions with an objective position supported by theory and technique so as to partake in scholarly conversation. These ongoing endeavors have met with some success, with our graduates of the Institute making inroads in academia, government authorities, and the private realm. This para-academic program, Urban Dialogue, is a discursive space to share ideas, to create an awareness about issues in each specific context. I encourage all our attendees, students, participants, and alumni to participate in this engaging dialogue. With this short introduction, I now invite Sanaya Vandrewal, Assistant Professor and Coordinator of the Master's Program, to introduce our invited guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ainsley. I have the privilege of introducing our three esteemed panelists today. Vidya Mohan Kumar is an architect and an urban designer with 17 years of experience in India, Ireland, and the United States. Her work is focused on creating cities that are people-oriented and centered around transit as part of a sustainable development agenda that she's passionate about. Her approach is driven by research that is grounded and intersectional as a way to understand the everyday urbanism of the cities. With the clientele ranging from state governments, urban local bodies, town councils, private sectors, and NGOs, her urban design projects exhibit a wide variety with master plans for cities, towns, station areas, harbour areas, and environs, as well as redevelopment plans for city public spaces and brownfield sites. Most recently, in 2019, she was appointed as a technical expert on public open spaces by the National Institute of Urban Affairs to mentor smart city projects in Hubli and Dharwad and Agartala under the CTI's challenge. Welcome, Vidya. Our next panelist, Kiram Kalamdani, was born in Bahrain and brought up in Pune and graduated from the VKPS College of Architecture. He has received a fellowship from the Charles Wallace Trust and has participated in the University of York course on conservation. On returning to India, he started a practice in architecture, urban design, and conservation and interior design with his wife Anjali, called Kimaya. Since 1989 at Kimaya, they have completed about 200 projects in various disciplines, trained more than 300 graduates, undergraduates, and postgraduates, and held several exhibitions, lectured extensively across the country and abroad, written several books, articles, and poems, and participated in activism and voluntary programs. Welcome, Kiran. And last but not the least is Dr. Tapas Mitra, an architect and urbanist and presently an associate professor in urban design at the School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. He's held the position for the head of architecture and urban design at the Institute. His research interest focuses at the intersections of architecture, urban design, and urban planning. He has presented his research on the inner core of Indian cities at prestigious conferences. Dr. Mitra is also an artist and has been featured multiple times on international site of the Urban Sketchers and other platforms. He has been an international faculty at the World Symposium of Urban Sketchers in Chicago 2017 and has written about various aspects of urban and brings his knowledge of art and urbanism in his talks and writings. Welcome to all our panelists. We really appreciate you giving your time and sharing your views with all the participating students. We are going to have the session in three themes, and all the three guests will be participating with a discussant from the faculty of KRVI. It's a 25-minute session for each of the three themes. I will now be calling on Janella, who will introduce all the three themes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanaya. The Urban Dialogue 2022, like Sanaya just mentioned, has been organized as 3 sessions centered on the city as a recurring theme. The city has been placed at the pivot of this discussion to unravel notions of its framing, to serve as a turnaway from its centricity and to question its relationship with people, places, and systems. This is not to say that the city as an entity is the only scale and focus, but it is a key determinant for infrastructure, housing, public space, and citizenship. Theses of the various participants have been organized under 3 themes: city and ecology, city and the public, and neighborhood in the city. These themes were framed on the basis of the work and the discussion that they could enable. It is imperative that we engage through these themes not solely for their specific terminologies and connotations, but also as a systemic understanding within the larger urban discourse. A rhizome can never be broken. It grows and further branches out, rooted to its existing network. Metaphors and structures of ecology, when applied to the urban realm, allows for frameworks that reveal networks, flows, and associations between various actors and agencies. The first session, City and Ecology, probes within the disciplines of urban design and conservation, the revelations and extensions beyond drawn-out boundaries, and the seamless merging of scales. The public realm is claimed and created through new typologies and memory and the making of inclusive spaces to accommodate a cross-section of users. The public, and therefore the public realm, is constantly being made and unmade through these acts of measuring and mediation, and forms the basis for the second session, City and the Public. Neighborhoods are layered sites. This layering retrieves urban scenes as vestiges of different times, leading the spectator to oscillate between official narrations and personal lived experiences. One can identify local history and regional traditions that were implemented through design code. The third session, Neighborhood in the City, seeks to inquire how these spaces have challenged universal terms like city, town plan, or public sphere, leading to specific relations between history and place, and these being manifested as programs, architecture, and everyday rituals. I now request Suchi Joshi, faculty at KRVIA, to commence the first session.
Thank you, Janelia. Good morning, everyone. So our today's first theme is city and ecology. And each of the topics here broadly aim to describe the relationship between human and nature and to give solutions for the coexistence in human-dominated systems. So these topics have different approaches like ecological urbanism, biophilic designs, and capitalization of assets to develop urban voids. So I would like, I request all the participants to switch on their cameras. We have Niveda Ramesh, Sakshi Madik, and Vishweshwari Pradesh. Are their cameras on?
Could you just give me a minute to change the setting?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So we have 3 topics in the theme. First is Sakshi Madik's topic, which is establishing a future trajectory to ensure resilience in hinterland of Satara city through the approach of ecological urbanism. So yeah, Sakshi, you have talked a lot about pressures on the hinterland. Can you briefly explain like how you analyzed those pressures and how have you tried to address it? Just a brief.
Yeah, because of increasing pressures which are coming from cities, as the city expands, city tries to encroach into the hinterlands or the suburbs. Then eventually what happens, the norms which are applied in the city are applied there, which is in case of Satara. And that's the reason why the ecology there is ignored, and ecologically sensitive areas are getting hampered because of this. So this is mainly what I've talked about.
Thank you, Sakshi. Can we have other participant also? Vishweshwari, can we have Vishweshwari also on the screen?
Hi, good morning.
Oh yeah, you are there. Okay, her topic was exploring biophilic approach to forge coexistence with nature and wildlife in urban settings. So Vishweshwari, can you briefly explain what was your primary concern and how have you approached like biophilic as a solution?
Okay. So, our cities today are very materialistic and sterile. So, like the green designs focus on how you can reduce the environmental impacts and everything, but I think solutions on how urban dwellers can reconnect to nature in the cities is very important. And secondly, the cities can be very hostile for the wildlife. So I think both these concerns were important in order to create that bond with nature, so that the urban dwellers can benefit restoratively, and also have, because of the bond, eventually the environment is protected and sustained. So these two were the major concerns, and then the thesis went ahead with it.
Thank you, Vishweshwari. Uh, the third topic is by Niveda Ramesh. Niveda Ramesh, is she here? Um,
No, I don't think she's here.
yeah, she's not here.
I
So her
think they're
topic is.
contacting her.
Oh, okay, okay. Uh, shall we wait or we can start with the discussions with panelists?
I think we can start, and if she
Yeah.
joins in, then she can.
Okay. So I invite our panelists to comment on today's theme, which is city and ecology. And you may also ask questions to the participants. We have Vishweshwari and Sakshi here. So can we start with Vidya Mohan Kumar, ma'am?
Sure. Sakshi, I'm just like looking at your abstract here, and you were talking about resilience in hinterland of Satara city. So, can you tell me you were talking about how the pressures of urbanization are affecting the hinterlands because the city sort of grows outward. What are the frameworks that currently allow this proliferation? Have you examined that through your thesis? Like, what is it that is actually sort of engendering this change that we are seeing, where the city is eating up into the urban ecology that or rather, the city is allowing a compromise in the urban ecology.
Yeah. As you have read my abstract, there is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is the Kas Pathar. So it is also called as the Valley of Flowers. Then surrounding it, it is a buffer area where, so in the World Heritage Site, which is the protected site, no construction is allowed. But in the buffer area, some construction is allowed with some regulations. But in the unprotected area, which is very close to the city and also close to the protected site in the buffer area, so there are no such regulations which make, because it is also ecologically sensitive area, and there I have observed some watersheds are encroached because of the haphazard construction.
Yeah, but my question is, what is allowing this breach? I mean, we have an ecologically sensitive area, but at the same time, there is a certain breach that you have observed, which is prevalent in that, like very very adjacent to the Kars region that you're talking about. My question is, like, what are the different drivers that are allowing this breach to happen? It could be anything. It could be like state-driven, some initiatives. It could be private interests, or sort of change in patterns, like migration resulting in those lands coming up for distress sale, or or just like they're just not tended to anymore, like, sort of neglect. What are the, just trying to understand what are the forces that are driving this change, in a very adjacent to an ecologically sensitive region?
Okay, first of all, it is a tourist place. So many of the commercial interest can be seen here, because this area is developed as private resorts, private farmhouses, because it is also close to these.
Sorry, so can we say that the regulations are allowing this, like, or that there is an absence of regulations which don't, sort of allow this, like, or rather, like, vice versa? Like,
Actually, regulations are also allowing this, and there is also neglect of the governing bodies. So, because there are also many constructions which are not following the regulations as well.
Okay, so there's a sort of poor regulatory framework as well. There is the enforcement is also not that great. And then because of the tourism aspect, we are having, that proliferation is driven by the tourism aspect, right?
Yes.
Can we sort of, have, I mean, just for a broad understanding of, what is the cause and effect in your case example that you're looking at, just to sort of establish that. So in your thesis, to ensure resilience, like, can you just sort of give us a gist of what is the sort of future trajectory that you are envisioning? Like, so when you say ecological urbanism in this part, how does it manifest itself? What are the tools that are necessary for you to ensure that we are able to achieve an ecological urbanism model, as in contrast to the model that we are seeing on the ground at the moment?
Yeah, as you said, I'm looking at it with the lens of ecological urbanism. Ecological urbanism, basically, I'm trying to incorporate this in that area with the help of regulatory framework, first of all, by putting regulations which can help to protect the ecologically sensitive area, as well as the local community, which has a wide range of knowledge uh, of this of the vegetation present there, or the because this local community is engaged in uh, farming, and as well as I have also mentioned there, homestead gardens are there where they plant medicinal herbs as well. So they have a good knowledge about all these herbs and plantations present in that area. So local community should be protected, because of this urbanization or the urban sprawl which we can see in the hinterland. What is happening? The agricultural land is changing to non-agricultural, because of the land use change, and they are getting more benefits from it, so they are selling their lands and migrating to the cities, and this traditional or cultural knowledge which is present in this community is getting lost. And the second thing is the regulatory framework, because as tourists are can be seen in this area, tourism is flourishing since this site has become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and many tourists can be seen in the blossoming season. So even the interests of commercialization of there are many hotels, resorts coming up. So these interests can be seen, but all those interests are okay. We can have developed that area, but I think it should be developed in an ecologically sensitive area. So the first of all is the regulatory framework, and the second is protecting the local community. So these two are the things which I am prominently looking at.
Okay, I'll just leave one last thought and let the other panelists speak. In your sheet that you had submitted, I'm just looking through and I'm not able to find a physical manifestation. Like, what would this look like? like, as a sort of a scenario modeling to demonstrate what this valley could look like with an ecological urbanism approach in comparison to what is the business as usual that is happening right now. I don't know if you've done that, but it would be worthwhile to do that to make a case, because the visual would offer a lot more meat for someone to chew on and see that, okay, this is what it looks like, and that it can still offer economic values. Those are the two parts that would strengthen your case in is what I feel generally, just looking at the material that you've submitted.
Okay. If you can see on the right side, I have shown two sections
Yeah.
showing the current case and what will it be if all these norms and the community is protected. But yeah, I would have made a 3D view or something like
Yeah,
that. So
that just yeah, because it's a difficult sell. Ecological urbanism is a difficult sell. The value always is overridden by the economics, and which is the starting point for why we are in this position in any case. So if we need to sort of change that, I think it needs a lot more case building material. Of course, there's the economic value assessment, which, I mean, we're not that equipped to do that much, but it might be useful to look at it at least qualitatively. But the visuals would have definitely helped for someone to see what it would look like compared to what it is right now. I'll stop.
okay, thank you. I will look at it and try to make the visuals as well.
Can we have questions or comments from other panelists also? Kiram Kalamdani sir.
Yeah, Sakshi, I have some of observations to make. When one is studying such a subject, it is also essential to look at the larger framework in which things are happening around this place, and the kind of regulatory framework and the way it is supporting or obstructing the whole notion of development. Because in Maharashtra, the whole government is driven from Mumbai. And what I have seen over the last few years, I've worked as a conservation committee member in the Mahabaleshwar, Patgani areas, which is very, very close to this one. And the entire notion of development, which is very strong among the politicians. And we see instances like the Lavasa, which came up almost overnight, not far away from here. And finally, the Ministry of Environment came down very heavily upon it, and they tried to curtail, the so-called development activity. They wanted to make a kind of a Italian town around the river, around the waterfront, and which was very severely reprimanded by the Ministry of Environment. So there is the whole notion of development, which is completely going towards destroying, such areas. And on the other hand, you have, these, older residents from there. 12 years ago, when we visited Lavasa, it was very quiet, and the tourists had just started coming in. It was just getting recognized as one. In fact, we had a classmate when we were doing urban design in SPA, who was from Satara, and I was surprised that he had never mentioned Lavasa to us. So it was so unknown at that time. But over the last few years, we are looking at this kind of development, and what was being said earlier was that what is the kind of environment in which all this is happening. There is a complete divide, between the people who want development, who can afford development, who can buy the land for the farmhouses and go and build there. And they have a real problem trying to understand what is ecological urbanism and why are the environmentalists trying to protest, against the various developments that are happening. Mostly it is the kind of cars that come to Lavasa, and they, only recently they've been banned from getting into there, and there is that kind of a challenge, about managing the kind of World Heritage status and all the social media that is full of beautiful pictures of those flowering, species of this place. So I think there is a need to look at, I think, this place in a larger context of what are the notions of development, where is the regulatory framework headed towards, what are the worse or better things happening around the place, So what I feel is that the thesis can't be centered just around the place that you're looking at. There is a larger macro picture that needs to be brought in, and that largely informs the various challenges, or it magnifies the challenges that come from various directions, or even the potential. For instance, a student was doing his thesis on Satara and its hinterland and a kind of regional plan of Satara. And what I had to tell him that it is so nice that Satara doesn't have a Pune in it, which is such a large city, and it's a very ecological way of living in smaller towns, closer to nature and the villages. Probably the villages are one of the best solutions, for ecology, where you have a very small settlement, which is surrounded by a kind of agriculture, and that is much more ecologically sound. But obviously, it doesn't have the extent of a city, and which is what people are wanting to have. And whether all these notions of development are desirable or not. So taking a larger people's view, taking a larger bureaucrat's view, taking a larger environmentalist view. So if you can personalize these entities or these thought streams that are impinging upon the environment, many things will make a lot of sense, because what Vidya Mohan was asking you about, who are the heroes and who are the enemies in this whole game that we are looking at. Because as urban designers, as conservationists, we tend to look at the physical interface of a city or a region or things like that, and we do not look very closely at what are the people who are leading or opposing the kinds of developments. So I think in a thesis like that, in a study like that, which is quite good actually, I was looking at those sheets that you made. And there is a good beginning at trying to look at the physical profile of the place. But equally important is the various kind of forces that are not seen, but they are very much there and which are causing the changes. Yeah, I think that's all what I wanted to say about this. Over to you, Taposh.
Thank you, sir.
Tapas Mitra sir, can we have questions and comments for both of the students actually?
Yeah. Actually, we are running out of time. I can understand. Yeah, just a quick couple of points. One is, when we talk about nature and cities, I think we are looking at certain universal themes. So one quick point is how do we look at it as something which is universal. I mean, cities will grow, and there is nature around us. So this is a sort of a question that we have to ask ourselves all over the world. That how are we looking at these interfaces, and how cities are growing and growing into the hinterland. Second is we've seen. That it has always been a kind of an alternative. I mean, whenever we talk about ecology, it's kind of an alternative. So how do we mainstream this? I think this is something that, these are questions to all of you, to both the graduates. I just wanted to share something. A long time back, actually, we had I attended a workshop at Auroville, Science Center, and there they were talking about, alternative energies and things like that. And then they said, I think this was in 2000, 2003 or 4, I think 2004, 3 or 4. Yeah, and they were saying that looking at the timeline, that's saying that, in 2018, the fossil fuel price and the solar the two graphs will cross, which didn't actually. So, so there are various reasons. I would not say it's only technical. There are lots of political, socio-political layers to that, and all that acceptance and things like that. So that's also a very important thing. Mainstreaming this ecological alternative, so to speak. And third, I think both of you have heard of and seen the works of the new urbanists in American, which new urbanism is an American movement. So, look at that and look at a book by Peter Calthorpe called Sprawl Repair. How do we, sort of intervene in sprawls? That's what, our concern is at this point in time. So the thing is, I think when you are intervening, so the wonderful drawings, thanks for, kudos to you, great drawings and wonderful sort of analysis. So question here remains that we have to intervene less and less, we have to less and less. We have to probably, do a reverse thinking, take away our footprints, in certain ways, that we can't sort of load our hinterlands with more and more development. So how do we do this reverse engineering in certain ways? How do we take away our footprint? That's very important. Building footprints and everything, our energy footprint, fossil fuels, take away. So is it possible to do that? Is there a reverse way? Can we think in a different way? How do we actually look at, delineating our cities and the hinterlands? That's very important. How do we look at the governance and mechanisms of, governance? And as designers, how do we actually approach the authorities, and how do you sort of do this minimal intervention thinking and reverse engineering? These are my questions and comments, little comments.
Do you want to talk about this, Vishweshwari? Because you are working in dense urban settings. So
actually, can I, before Vishweshwari responds, yes. I just want to I'll add another question and then she can respond. So in your abstract, there's a very pertinent sentence which says that, the metric for biophilic urbanism is in the number of products and installations. It's actually a very, hard-hitting statement, and I totally, want to applaud you for that. But also at the same time, I would, again, the same comment as I had for Sakshi is, how does it manifest itself? What would our city look like if we had done it right, instead of just, putting all these vertical gardens, which we're seeing quite a lot. And I'm based in Chennai, and our corporation is actually quite obsessed with, installing vertical gardens everywhere. Many of them survive and they don't survive, in equal measure. But what is your sort of, the imagined city that, we would have? What would it feel like for a citizen to be living in a city that was built on principles of biophilic urbanism?
Yes, ma'am. So when I was figuring out answers for these things, what I noticed was the best way to get the answers were from the people who are actually living in as in coexisting with the wildlife. So I met the Koli community and the Adivasi community to actually just pick up certain values which designers can adopt. So that's the reason I had put about the metrics and how you cannot put it into numbering, because it's something so organic, and of course you can measure the many things about it, but then I think this regulatory vision or this ethical vision to approach towards the city, it will one way to do is to understand what exactly is happening to the wildlife or to the non-human elements in the city, in what are actions, not in just terms of the activities, but even certain elements that we use, like to like maybe electricity or vehicles or our buildings. What effect is what effect are they having on wildlife? I think if we are sensitized about that, then maybe we can move on to the solutions कि हाँ ये चीजें हो सकती है, but otherwise
Perhaps
if
you
we
can
are going to
examine
benefit from.
perhaps you can examine indicators, like maybe not even, I mean, visualization is of course one thing, but then in your case, maybe it might be worthwhile to examine what are the indicators to measure, if you're in the right direction. I mean, I would apply actually to even Sakshi's, because we were talking about making a case for ecological urbanism, and I guess in terms of checking if we're moving on the right path, maybe an alternative set of indicators would also be another approach to see if we're going where we want to be going.
Sakshi, do you want to comment something or?
I think, Suchi, you can inform all the other participants that the link has been shared for the exhibition so they can view the projects as the participants are.
Oh, ma'am, can you repeat the question once again?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it wasn't a question. It was more about, so remember I said that it would be useful to have sort of visuals to imagine what it would look like. I mean, just taking both of your cases, I was also musing if it would be worthwhile to see if we can arrive at certain indicators to measure, the ecological slash bio, because this is an alternative model that we're proposing, and we're asking for but how do we know that we are actually name is Veshwari, right? Yeah, like in her thesis, she talks about how the metrics are associated with products and installations instead of something like that, and this could even sort of go back to these IGBC and LEED rating. Like it's like there's some check boxes and then you get a certificate, but is that really enough? Is a question. And does that add up to if maybe 90% of the buildings in the city are IGBC platinum rated, does that mean that we have moved a little bit closer to the models that are based on ecology that we're talking about? Again, just like sort of thinking out loud, or just throwing some propositions out for sake of discussion here. But I think it might be useful to think of how we want to measure whether we are able to move towards an urbanism that is more centered on ecology.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, even while studying this area, I had used these spatial attributes of resilience, which are adaptability, redundancy, interconnectivity, and diversity. So, on these four aspects, I had divided I had taken four transects and then studied these area. So, in that, I found out that maybe redundancy is not there or interconnectivity is not there because of the roads passing in between. So these small like the ecologically sensitive area is divided even due to the plottings or these things. So maybe as you said that we can make these charts or matrices so that we can just ensure that we are on the right track or not. So yeah, these were the things which I had looked at. So so once we apply this model, we can again go back to it and see that if, whether now is all of it ticked right or not.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just that it's a challenge, and we also as urban designers need to think of ways in which we can achieve what we want. Like we're talking about a different future, a different paradigm of planning and designing cities. So instead of just sort of talking about the talking about it at a conceptual, ideological level, it's imperative that we also talk about how to actually get there, and looking at it from the point of view of different players in the larger ecosystem of making cities. Right? There's private players, there's state players, there's just like all of us, citizens. So just from picking on stakeholders and trying to see how all of them can come together to make this vision possible is definitely a worthwhile exercise that we all of us as urban designers need to sort of pick up on in terms of a skill set. I'm going to stop there. I feel like I'm talking too much. Shruchi might be a bit worried.
Sorry. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, everyone, actually. So we will conclude this theme 1. We'll move to theme 2.
I would like to ask a question to our panelists and to the thesis students as well. I mean, two concerns.
Ainsley, we have a concluding session at the end of all the themes. Maybe we can keep all the questions for there so that there's no break in the flow.
There is some time for this, so we can continue for 5 minutes more.
Can I just intervene?
9 students.
Yeah, can I ask Architect Kiran Kalamdani to just speak a few words and his comments? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not an organizer, but because I would like to hear him once actually.
Actually, this question was out to him because I mean, since we're talking about the Khas Plateau and it talks about UNESCO World Heritage, and UNESCO is a big player in kind of endorsing these spaces. So I mean, cultural landscapes is something as a very important issue. So I mean, the question is out there. And the second issue I want to raise is a very contemporary issue in terms of climate change. Since I mean, I think we can stir this conversation around these 2 points for both the projects. Yeah. I think Kiran, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, what I feel is that the UNESCO dimension gets blown up and disproportionately to the amount of clout that it can have or the influence that it can have to regulate any development or the lack of development in a certain area. Because it is understood technically that UNESCO is supposed to be all the governments coming together, but it is largely led through central governments, whereas here in these local areas that we are trying to look at, it is mostly the state government that acts, since it is this kind of urban development or the kind of ecological development is a state subject. Only when it comes to environment does the center have an upper say in this. So only recently people have started discovering that UNESCO recognition is a big thing and to have it is a very good thing and all that. But like what Vidya also said, that monitoring these indicators, monitoring these various manifestations that things have, and then trying to project the ultimate scenarios based on what will happen if a certain kind of development continues over a long period. What kind of a climate change will it lead to? What kind of a problem with air pollution or noise pollution or polluting water, would it lead to, is something which I think needs to be aggressively built at. I'm very glad to see the kind of analytics and the kind of information that is being gathered as a result of such kind of studies. At least we have started making a beginning in that. But to bring out effective sort of indicators that will influence decision making is more important. Because if you see now, it doesn't figure anywhere on the political agenda of the decision makers, who are influential in urban development in the state, say, or even at a national level. Only recently, and for that matter, even yesterday, this member of Rajya Sabha, Vandana Chavan, who is a Pune-based lawyer. She was talking about 6 points of urbanism which have been ignored by the center in recent times. So it is I think inevitable that such kind of studies that these girls are making would finally should reach the people who can understand them. Unfortunately, what I can see, for the sake of brevity, you've put all that in one sheet, but when it comes to conveying information, and I would refer to what Ainsley Lewis said in the beginning about trying to, create a emphasis on academic writing. And here I feel there should be an equal emphasis on being able to convey a kind of a hypothesis or a problem situation verbally and through presentations. Because the way you need to present to the politicians or the people at large and who are non-technical, you need to bring it down to a very, very simply understandable level, almost the level of an advertisement that you see on television, which is very brief, which is very to the point, and it relies on that short period for sense of recall. So all of this is required, and I would like to encourage, the kind of analysis, the kind of focus on issues, and the kind of studies that is happening here in this studio. But it is just only a beginning, and we need to go much further to become influential. Who knows? One of you might tomorrow sit in the parliament and talk about these things, and we need to step into the real political corridors and make these things sound relevant for future development. Thanks, Taposh.
Thank you, Kiran sir. Okay. Thank you, Kiran sir. Thank you, Tapas sir. Thank you, Vidya ma'am, for your valuable comments. I think students will take it forward. So can we move to theme 2? I will invite now Radhana to take over.
Thank you, Suji. Good morning, everyone. I'm Aradhana Parlikar, and the theme City and Public mainly explores the idea of livability, breathable cities, social identity, children-friendly cities, and role of conservation in making an idea of placement. So, starting with the session will start with the panelist itself, Vidya Mohan Kumar ma'am. You have an amazing work on public realm, and your firm has been, thoroughly associated with public realm around the city. Can you just put a brief highlight on what are your kind of work? You are on mute, ma'am.
Right. I thought we were having the students present first, but no problem. The theme here is city and the public. And I know that you mentioned, in the abstracts itself that, they're sort of looking at various dimensions, looking at, public space typologies and responding to different stakeholders, like, whether it's child-friendly cities and so on. I'm kind of curious, can we just have the students present, because I'd like to respond to what they've done, and I think it would yes, it's definitely the domain that we've been working on extensively, but let's hear them first. I think the stage is theirs for today.
Okay then. So we have 5 students presenting their work today. Abhiroop Sarkar, Amay, Juhi Pandya, and Naveen Pal, and Rajat Sonab. Okay, so can we have the students' cameras on?
Can the students participating in this theme please turn on their cameras? Aradhana, would you call their name once again?
Juhi Pandya, Abhiroop Sarkar, Amay Varegaonkar, Naveen Pal, and Rajat Sonamne.
So maybe we can start with Abhirup if he's there. You're talking about new public space typologies. Is Abhirup, are you there?
Sorry, Vidya. I can see Juhi on screen, so maybe you can start with
Yeah.
Juhi. Would that be all right?
Right. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So Juhi is talking about reviving the historic identity of lesser-known town Sihor. Um, how are you I mean, this is, I've seen students wanting to do this a lot, like, reviving the historic identity. What is your trigger for that? Like, what is the historic identity that you want to restore? And my question to theses, projects, or, any sort of research question along these lines is the same, is why is the changing identity, not the identity itself? Why do we need to sort of revive a historic identity in order to, preserve the identity of that particular place? Right. I mean, after all, change is constant. Cities grow. So, can you just shed some light on your positioning over there?
And another little question, Joey. Your drawings look like hand drawings, and what about that? Your drawings and your. You're not audible. You're not audible. Just for the sake of
drawings are not. I don't see them as hand drawn, Tapas.
Oh, probably I've mixed it up or something.
Hi, am I audible?
It's a very digital sheet that I'm looking at.
Looks like a little. There's a touch of the human being there. Human touch there. I may be wrong. It's all mixed up in this kind of conversation.
Can you begin with the introduction and a brief introduction?
Ma'am, 1 second. There's a little disturbance. I'm unable to hear clearly.
Sure.
Sanaya ma'am, I could not hear you. Can you repeat what you said?
You want me to repeat my question?
No, I got your question.
Okay.
After that, when sir was asking me regarding the drawings, there was a disturbance.
So they are asking you about what was the process and the representation techniques that you followed. Okay.
Okay. So first, I would like to address this, that when I am talking about identity, I agree that yes, changing identities need to be considered, and yes, it's a continuous process. But my idea behind taking up this thesis was to additionally, remind people of what exactly made the town in the first place. Why was it so important, along with what is currently existing. So basically, the idea was to combine everything and also to remind people what they had forgotten about what was important of the town. So basically, the setting of the town was such that there is a active commercial spine where they have a lot of handicraft work and everything happening. But they were living, all of this was happening in between a historic, fortified town, which people were not addressing. Even the local authorities and everyone, they were considering it as, while they were considering it as an old place, there was no regulation to keep any sort of protection in place to protect what was there. I am not saying that I am rebuilding everything, but the intention was to protect whatever is existing in place so that there was no further deterioration. Because it's a 500 year old.
Sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify, is this a reference only to the physical form of the town and the physical landscape of the town? Is that what you're associating with the identity? Because just trying to understand, like, what are the socio-cultural aspects here that all like go in tandem with the historic identity of this place. And you mentioned commercial, so there could be a socio-economic angle as well, right? So is there a breach in the on that front? And if so, again, it's like it would be nice if you could establish why there is a breach, in terms of, like why has there been a waning of this identity, and what is it morphing into? That sort of journey, is not, or rather, can you shed some light on that journey from the origin of the human settlement in this particular town, and what were the primary drivers, and who were the primary drivers? There's obviously people associated with the driver, whether it is weaving or agriculture or trade or anything. There's always a people associated with it. You can't remove people from that equation.
Yeah.
um, and what is causing this shift, where we are, where it leads to a perception of a loss of identity because something has been removed. Unless if you're talking only about the built form and the landscape, then you can also talk about what is it that has resulted in the waning of identity through these markers, right? The built form, a built environment is, in a sense, a writing of the way that city has, the city or the town or the settlement has grown or developed, and therefore these are all sort of markers that give us a sense of what's happening. Are those markers disappearing?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about this transformative journey?
I will explain how the entire town kind of functioned for a long period. So the town basically consisted of Brahmins. It was located in a location where it was, so it has this entire mythological association where it is said it's from the period of Mahabharata. And till date, what we observe in town is that majority of the population still belongs to Brahmins. But even now that is fading because people have started choosing to move out. Because this once was a capital of a kingdom, there was a lot of emphasis on its development at that time. But the moment it shifted to another place, all the development shifted, and what left behind was, a lot of limited amenities and infrastructure for development, and due to which generation, like from my generation or like from the previous generation, people have started moving out of town. So what is happening now, the town only has like a certain age group where they are usually elderly who know about the town. But if there is somebody who's moved out of the town for their further education, they have kind of lost touch with what their town is all about, and they do not see anything special about it. They feel as if it's just like one of those other places maybe which they cannot relate to. But the idea was to bring in understanding for the younger generation over there also, to be able to associate not just with the activities. Basically the activities are still continuing, but they are not understanding why the entire layout of the town is how it is, or why the fabric is so important. There is a lot of insensitive redevelopment that was happening, and people were not understanding why was it important to consider a certain area before demolishing and rebuilding it. The entire layout is such that it's very unique in its form. It's set on a hilly terrain, and so my idea was to sensitize people, not just, yes, built fabric protection is one aspect of it, which was very important for me. But there were other smaller aspects, like the commercial town. There is very famous in Gujarat, basically in the locality where there's this ritual of gifting females something before they get married. So this town specializes in hand making those utensils.
So people from all over Gujarat at least come here for that work. But what is happening, even that craft was getting diluted because people had shifted to machineries, and plus they were moving out of the old town. So all of that was also kind of shifting. So the idea was to uh, not exactly introduce new things in the sense, but to keep in place whatever was there to protect everything from the commercial aspect to the religious aspect and the built fabric. So as you can see, whatever I have proposed is kind of addressing all of these issues. It was to whoever was coming to the town, they could properly see. The locals can properly identify themselves and orient themselves as to where they are going from, why was that place important. And there were some guidelines that I had provided, not just to protect the built fabric, but also the natural landscape that is surrounding it. Because the landscape and the fabric, they are kind of interconnected because there are a lot of these visual connections from one religious site to the other. So all of those corridors, according to me, were important to be protected.
So again, I'm just thank you for that explanation, but I'm still not able to find, who would be the custodian of, these interventions. Like, whose interest is it to have these identities preserved, and what is it, why is it that there is not enough case to just allow it to take its course in terms of how it is changing as a town.
Okay, so ma'am, first I
Because
would
you've
look
spoken
at
about people moving out, which means, and that there's like, because there's not enough opportunities here. They're moving out, and this is quite a common pattern with many smaller towns. And all small towns have their own identity. So, I mean, irrespective of like, let's just like not get into, without getting into specifics of the town that you are looking at. Just trying to sort of see if we can make this a general commentary. Like, with small towns and with migration and with loss of the primary economic activities, either through mechanization processes, or just simply the customs that are like disappearing. Like, you spoke about the utensils that are given during weddings, and what if those customs are sort of like not valid anymore, or I mean, or people are not interested in giving that much, and it's just a token gesture. And how do we deal with this sort of transformative landscape of our human sort of existence itself? And it's like, I'm not posing it to you. I mean, even the panelists can respond, but it's just a general musing on how do we deal with this kind of a phenomena.
Ma'am, first, when it comes to these handicraft things, so what I observed was people there itself have started evolving. So from limiting themselves to just utensils, they've kind of started taking up other items that they've started making. So they have started making figurines. They've started making a lot of brass items, which are not just required as gifting to, but other items also. People who might be interested in kind of buying different materials apart. Am I still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Are you done, Julie?
No, I was still saying. Apart from that, what I tried to do was I tried to make my interventions were such that I tried to make the place interesting for the younger generation. So I tried to connect the local people with the historic fabric. As in, there's an old palace where I tried to, because I think that was one of those structures where there was nothing happening. People were passing through. There was no sort of activity happening. It was dead. So I just simply through an activity, I tried to attract people to photography. For
Is this
example,
the
photography.
interpretation center that you're referring to in your project?
Yes.
The adaptive reuse interpretation center. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, who's the audience for it? Who's actually visiting this town? Is it for the residents of that town alone, or are you
No.
hoping to draw people from other parts and therefore make it into a tourist attraction? Which means that you are actually infusing a different kind of a driver into this place through tourism economy.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
So, ma'am, there is a certain layer of tourism existing in the town because of these people coming in to buy items and everything. Plus, the town acts as a pause point between 2 or 3 major religious centers within the area, like Palitana, which is a major Jainism center. So people kind of always have to pass through this town. So I tried to just uh, enhance what the town had to offer and make it a pause point between the journey from one place to the other, so people can kind of also experience what this town has to offer. And also obviously for the locals, because I have also tried to put in a cafe. There are a lot of visual corridor, like those viewing points and artist places that I have introduced for either photography or any sort of artistic activities people are interested in. So that is for obviously people who are local and from the surrounding region.
Thank you, Juhi. I'm really sorry to cut it off. I would request Kiran sir to put some light on Juhi's project and how does conservation play an important role in maintaining the public in the city?
Yeah, what I think is it's a fantastic study that she has done about trying to unravel what is heritage here, right from the intangible assets to the various temples, the physical things, the folk dances. So it is, I think, in my opinion, it's like a most complete town here. Though she has said lesser known, of course it is. First I thought Sihor is in Madhya Pradesh, but then I saw that in her location show it is in Gujarat. And so thank you very much, Juhi, for all that kind of documentation you've tried to put into this one sheet. And it is really a whole world, that you've tried to represent there. And my heartiest congratulations to you for that. What Taposh thought that it's a hand-drawn sheet, longer perspective, looks like a hand-drawn sheet. And I think one of the main reasons for understanding the richness and the interconnectedness of all these things that you have put in here is probably, that there is, I don't know whether it's a lack of pride of the place, whether it's the external factors who should come and, prop it up. I don't know what it is that keeps it as a lesser known town, because none of the Gujarat tourism promotions have ever spoken of Sihor, isn't it? So I think that it's a very good study and you've tried to focus it on the physical development, but probably a kind of a comprehensive approach in which all of these various factors that you call heritage in this earlier left-hand side part of your sheet. And maybe there need to be studies and proposals for each of these. Like how does one look at each of these, and how do the residents and probably some of the external factors take it forward. So obviously, since you're doing an urban design thesis, you would focus on some parts of the city and try to analyze them, like make that interpretation center, or focus on how that stepped well is going to really perform better, or some of the religious or other sites, how they're going to get conserved. But I feel that all those points on your left hand side need to be taken up as a group through various specialists, maybe, or maybe through the various residents of the town. So I think that kind of a comprehensive strategy is very important, though what you have done is quite an admirable job, of trying to do an urban designer's approach to that. But obviously, I think it should be, for being effective, a much more comprehensive effort. Thank you.
This is like so our other panelists are sorry, other participants are not here, but most of their work kind of focuses on livability, breathable cities, and questions on open spaces and children-friendly cities. So can Tapas sir or Vidya ma'am can put a light on such questions, and how do you overcome such questions in your practice?
Yeah, Aradhana, can I take this, Vidya?
Yeah, please do, please do.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, Aradhana, I'd like to say something. One is city and people is actually a theme which is central to all the tracks. City and people track, your neighborhood track, and ecology track. I think this is a central theme. So that's one point I'd like to make. It's very, very good. This is the central theme of our discussion. This is what we are discussing. Yeah, Juhi, your presentation is fantastic. Your presentation, the way you have sort of conveyed your thoughts on graphically is really, really marvelous. One thing, disturbance. Is there any disturbance?
Yes, there's a little bit of disturbance.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so some problem. Yeah, Juhi, you said you mentioned Mahabharata. No, you mentioned Mahabharata. You said mythology. It's not mythology. It's one of the. It's the greatest epic in the Indo-European palette of epic. And if you see, I'm just taking a discussion a little tangentially from this here because there's some important aspect of that actually. It is not only, Mahabharata is not only, the longest among the Indo-European group of epics, but you can see that the Vanaparva is actually Iliad and Odyssey combined, in terms of length, but not that. The most important and the central premise of Mahabharata is the issue of land. It's only one epic which actually is centered around land, bhumi, land. So that's very important, and that's central to all our discussions, I think, in urban design or urban planning, all these disciplines. I think the next point I think is what architect Kalamdani was trying to say was saying actually is how you bring and how we bring the tangible and intangible together. That's the biggest challenge. What Vidya was also trying to say, the identity. A city always changes. A city always changes. That's the nature. That's the essential nature of a city, that it will change. So landmarks will shift. So when we are talking about, let's say, a place where you have you have an important, building, let's say the old post office in Bangalore, and then you see Charles Correa's that Visvesvaraya Tower comes in. So people will, if two people are meeting in that region, they would not anymore say that we are meeting in front of the post office. We'll meet in front of Visvesvaraya Tower. So landmarks will change. So that's an important aspect we have to understand. So identity of a city. The tangible identity of a city will change, but there are certain, which Aldo Rossi also said in that book, Architecture of the City, the tangible identities will change when he's talking about housing, but he's saying that there are certain artifacts which are constant identities, which will obviously not change. That's what you are talking. And how you bring, what you are doing is how you bring activities to these abandoned places or whatever. Adaptive reuse. So how you are bringing activities into buildings which are not used. I think that's a very important aspect, which is very close to architect Kalamdani's heart also. Now, I'd like to just sort of share a small, small aspect of the smart cities mission, smart city mission here. From our institute, we were consultants to the 5 cities in Madhya Pradesh. And this ABD-based model, this area-based development model of smart city, we did a proposal. It was in place, and it was based on the smart city cell gave us a whole range of uses and possibilities we explored. And you know what? Very interesting. This is a general. Is it a problem with me, or is it a problem with me, my system, or is it a general problem?
Could you replug your headphones again? Yeah, headphones.
Yeah, I did it. Is it working better now?
Now it's better.
Okay. Yeah, so I was talking about this ABD, area-based development. So what we did, it's a general talk here that when we're talking about. So the question is, I think we need to sort of see this once again. This ABD model, because is it some kind of obviously the spectacle thing really doesn't work when you're talking about cities. A new spectacle in the form of an area-based development doesn't really work. Like the kind of the view of rebuilding cities, or building another layer to city, the Corbusian way of doing it really doesn't work, which we have discussed time and again. This kind of a sort of brazen modernism, or this kind of very aggressive modernism, or whatever you call it. Actually, you know what? Another thing is, when we're looking at this, looking at this housing stock, when looking at when we are doing the housing part of the ABD, in the ABD, so we were given a kind of a percentage, that this percentage of higher income housing is going to come in that area, right? Let's say it's whatever 50% or something. So now since we have a planning department also, so parallelly the planning department is working on the housing demand and all that. And when the proposal was through, we saw that because high-end housing, high-income housing is coming on the periphery, on the urban sprawl, the entire housing demand almost is gone there. And so actually in the ABD area, if you were to actually do that, you were left with only 5 or 6%. So we have to understand these things, when we're talking about, housing people and making the, that spectacle. Again, it's I think a kind of a contemporary take on the garden city, which, Jane Jacobs criticizes at various levels in that book, in the famous book. You must have read, Joey. That book is a must. It's a kind of a must-read book, Death and Life of Great American City. She's talking about these things, how from Ebenezer Howard to the City Beautiful movement, how and Corbusier, how the same theme of, this brazen modernism, or the aggressive modernism actually plays a spoil sport in our whole understanding of city, and the identities, the multiple identities of cities. That is, I think, very important when we're talking about city and people, So our ABD, our smart city mission has to be, I think, we have to rethink, and we have to actually rethink our entire attitude to identities and our cities, building, tangibles and intangibles, where they meet, and etc. etc.
Taposh, I think here the Bilbao model, where they worked on some 20, 30 different streams, to bring in a kind of a sea change in the way the whole city is presented to its inmates and its visitors, is quite important. Sorry
absolutely.
for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, the entire thing has shifted to Bilbao, right? Big time, Microsoft and all that. Yeah, architecture actually makes a lot of change. Yeah, so it has the power.
And a lady had made her dissertation on this Bilbao, and she broke the myth that Franco Gehry's Guggenheim Museum did it really change the future of Bilbao. And her final conclusion was that no, it did not. It was not that alone. It was 20, 30 other schemes that were along with this Franco Gehry's museum that brought about that change. So that kind of a change, if someone can bring in at Sihor, I think it'll really become one of the top towns of Gujarat to visit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelist. Now I request Apurva to take over for the next thing. Thank you.
So, sorry, Aradhana, the other 4 participants are not here, is it?
No, they are not here.
Okay.
This is for the attendees. The exhibition link is shared in the chat box. You can view the exhibition through there.
Unfortunately, some of the students have been having some difficulty in logging in. So some of them logged in late and some of them have not been able to log in. So unfortunately, they are not.
Okay. No, because they're all very diverse projects, and maybe like we'll just have a little like I just like to say a few words about the other 4 projects, and then we can close. Just they're part of the panel after all. I mean, what I just noticed is I think each of them looked at different scales, and that sort of I love that transition of the scales. Like for Rajat's project, he was looking at child-friendly cities, and then we have Abhirup, who's looking at typologies of new public spaces, and he's actually it's a really lovely study where he's really decoding performance of public spaces as they stand now, and then also proposing an alternate way for generating new public spaces. He's used some amount of parametrics to sort of see what kind of a public space can be generated, as well demonstrated that with one example, and that's actually quite commendable effort what he's put through. And the analysis is very is really insightful as well. And then we have Amey, who's looking at everyday urbanism. And what I noticed was he's specifically looking at connections between people and places, particularly in the context of the riverfront. And Naveen, who's looking at a local area plan through a people-centric approach. It was, for me, when I looked at it, it was really a SML Excel transition from child-friendly spaces in pockets of land all the way up to an LAP, but all of them with a focus on focus on the people aspect of it. The stakeholders are at the heart of a conversation, and I'd like to just commend the effort of the students, as well as the curation that put all of these out. This could have been a very interesting discussion if we had the other 4 with us today.
Yeah, I hope so. They watch the recording and get your comments through. Okay. Thank you so much, Vidya. And thank you all the panelists. Now we move on to the next thing.
Thanks, Aradhana. Good morning, everyone. I'm Apurva Anger. And we move on to the next and the last theme for the day, that is neighborhoods in the city. And we'll be addressing this to 4 theses that address ideas of characters of a space, which is very specific or indigenous to its own landscape, and how they resist patterns of gentrification. They also talk about community living patterns and community participation in neighborhoods. And in the face of urban development pressures, what are these resilience patterns of each of these neighborhoods? We have 4 people joining in. I think I'll just call out the names. We have Pratik Jadhav, who's talking about urban regeneration in the historic core of Nasik. Afifa Sheikh, speaking about changing dynamics of Gauthans and its impact on the communities in Mumbai. Hemant Verma, talking about reconnecting town railway corridor as barrier on neighborhoods, a case of Lonavala. And the 4th one is Samruddhi Mange, who's talking about empowering informal settlements with a tool of community kingships, a case of Ramnagar, Pune. So geographically, we have quite a range. I wish to ask the participants, the presenters, to please switch on your cameras. Okay. We have Prateek and Afifa here. Yeah, Hemant as well. It's just Samruti. If she's around, please switch on your camera. Otherwise, we can start the discussion. If we can start with Afifa Sheikh, who's talking about changing dynamics of Gautans and its impact on communities, and she addresses very closely community participation and engagement in the process of looking at neighborhoods. So, Afifa, if you can talk very briefly, what were your core concerns, and then we'll move on to just comments, quick comments, because we have 3 of you today.
Sure, ma'am. So my topic is changing dynamics of Gautans' impact on the communities. It's an approach to the urban redevelopment module for the historical agrarian indigenous settlements, which is a case of Amboli and Kemnipada villages. So since these are urban villages, and urban villages has been categorized into 3 different settlements categorizations, that is the Koliwada, the East Indian communities, that is the Gautans, and the Adivasi Pada, that is the tribal communities. Since all 3 communities have a different occupational base, and East Indian community being a Koli community, which has been pushed to the inner cities of the city of Mumbai due to increase of urbanizations, the city agglomerations, which has encompassed the city's spatial growth, providing a centrality to the urban context. So these urban villages, under the title of development, has faced a different aspects of opportunities and the probable threat at a different point of time. Since these villages should retain themselves, creating a strong character of these indigenous community, or else they will become a lost identity in the city due to the development or the development causes, which has drastic variations in the character of the indigenous settlements. So my thesis aims to understand these communities which are on the verge of urban blight, which has gentrified, and a different development of a neighborhood by reading its character to different lenses and analyzing its influence on the special transformations, its complex policies and norms and issues rising due to developments. So the final aim was how these using a redevelopment module, how these urban villages will be an example for the city level recommendations, which will help in building its sense of belonging in the cities. And at the same time, it will be an example to avert the notion of gentrified city development to more flexible approaches that allows to integrate the local aspect to create a new version as a city's identity.
Thank you, Afifa. Any of the panelists would like to comment? Mr. Thapas, sir, if you want to start the discussion.
I just wanted to make a point here with all the topics that are we talking about enclave urbanism, or are we talking about neighborhoods? Because this looks like a more and more homogeneous sort of space. So that's one point I would like to make. Another thing when we're talking about neighborhoods, I think a very important aspect is to be able to delineate the neighborhood. What is the extent of the neighborhood? I mean, is it possible to physically delineate a neighborhood? That's a very important aspect. And then when we are talking about intervention, I think Afifa, you also face this problem that when you are actually sort of intervening in the neighborhood, you have this problem that it's already too much built there, so you can't put in more built there. So how do we actually do that? Because even in older neighborhoods, not only the Gautans, so in the older neighborhoods, you see that when we're talking about let's say a developers model, it doesn't work because the entire FSI is already consumed there, you will see. So that's not possible. So I think again we are talking about minimal interventions in older neighborhoods, and when we're talking about again this question of identity, I think we are talking about minimal interventions. So I think this is one observation. Another observation that I would like to share with you. Yeah, so these are the two, 3 things I want.
Yeah.
May I interrupt? Sorry.
Sure.
So my point on this delineation of the neighborhood is very like lenient. The peripheral, you can't define the peripheral edge of the Gauteng since the new developments and the old development coexist in the same neighborhood. So how these development will go hand in hand through the neighborhood is the main concept coming up.
Okay. Do Vidya ma'am and Kiran sir want to comment on this? Vidya ma'am, you're on mute.
Yeah, I just have a general comment. I'm just looking at this theme and its neighborhoods in the city. And just in terms of a position, again, I think my point is the same as what I had for Juhi's thesis. Like one, of course, is a detailed study that documents the evolution of the neighborhood itself. But I'm always interested to see what are the forces that are shaping it. Are the forces detrimental in a way? Like, are the forces, against the will of the people? Or whether it is, desired by the people? Is it a natural transition and a natural growth of the people of that particular neighborhood that, is leading to a shift in their socio-cultural patterns and their socio-economic patterns, which then influence what is going on in the neighborhood, right? So that is one thing. It's like I find it problematic when the change is forced on them without consent, and and this is of course true for all of the projects that are in this theme. Like that if it is forced, and then what is the sort of mitigation that we can examine, and then we're talking strategy. Like how can we figure out a way for coexistence. Like there are the social impact of the development or the inserts have been not sort of have not been considered, and that is resulting in a certain conflict with people interest and what is the way the neighborhood is transforming itself. So I'm really interested in each of these cases to see what is the cause and effect here, that is, and therefore the strategy stems from that understanding. So it's just a general comment, not a comment to Afifa, but as a general comment on the theme itself.
Yeah, I think also Afifa through her thesis talks a lot about community participation and talking to them, and a lot of her methodology evolves from that. So Afifa, you can speak a bit about it since we are talking about it in terms of your process.
So major take on the process was a shareholder meeting where what the community really wanted, whether it's complete development, whether it's a partial development, as ma'am had talked about a forced development. So how that also can work on in these communities. Maybe it's a forced development. So what I suggested as my urban design guidelines was that make your settlements like from ground floor, the first floor, that is the eye level, as you have a unique historical patterns of what an urban village is, how these architectural characters of an urban villages are. So an eye level can have this urban village characters, and behind that or above floors can have a new complete redevelopment module of the things can happen. So that was my take on the forced development. But majorly, all the discussions which arises on urban villages, that the Gautens are majorly depending on the communities which are living there. So beyond that, we can't just force them to do what like they can't want or something.
Yeah. Vidya, again, you're on mute, please.
Gautans, it actually goes into a vicious cycle, right? Like, so there are pressures that force them to shift, make shifts in their patterns, current patterns of livelihood, and so on, and that actually spurs further gentrification, because they're like, anyway, the people are not engaged in their primary occupation, and therefore why not just sort of absorb it into the larger agglomeration of the city and follow the same set of guidelines and so on. So it really proliferates that vicious cycle, and it's a struggle to sort of keep it intact, but the key is actually in the people themselves. Like if they are willing to sort of hold on to it. But again, subject to pressures, I mean, if they're engaged in a livelihood that is no longer able to sustain itself because of a lack of demand, then there's just like it becomes extremely difficult for them to continue doing what they were doing and continue to sort of exercise their expertise and skills to create products or services that they were originally creating. So in that sense, it's really difficult, but always worthwhile exercise to at least document this transformation that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think here I would like to bring in Prateek's thesis and ask Dr. Kiran also to comment on it. Prateek was addressing the historic core of Nasik and looking at intangible and intangible aspects and designing strategies through them. So Prateek, if you can just speak a few lines about your thesis, and I will request Dr. Kiran to please comment on that.
Yes. So my main concern about this was how can an individual can easily relate to the historic core itself. So, but with time, what has happened due to a lot of urban pressures and global demands, we can say, the entire character of the precinct has been changed, and there is a disconnect between the citizens and the historic area. So main concern was that only ki, how can I indulge the community and the people of Nasik where they can get well they can how they can be just aware of what kind of heritage they have. So as of now there has been a huge disconnect. Right now the uh, like ways are they are finding out ways how this can be happen through heritage walks and all those stuff, but still when you are within the historic core there is you can see a lot of disconnect because all the uh, uh, the entire historicity of the place is not conveyed to an individual. So that was the main concern I was focusing upon. And in my study, so basically during the research, I that was the reason I studied all the urban patterns and how the entire community and the space are related to each other, wherein the importance of the space can be concluded. So on that basis, I had done my research. Yes.
Yeah, I think the research it follows a kind of a very predictable pattern, that has been happening for so many years in such theses, where we tend to look at landmarks or we tend to look at community spaces, and then we tend to look at street clusters or group value of buildings, and then after looking at the European models we feel that why can't those models come in and work here, you know? So I think the whole problem stems from the regulatory aspects here, which even if they talk about heritage conservation, they will look at them as individual buildings and not as precincts, or not as clusters of buildings. And that is one of the main problems. The second one is the whole notion of development is not inclusive of conservation, where even if a developer is trying to redevelop a wada or a townhouse, or niche dukan upar makan kind of analysis that you've put in, they would never try to incorporate the material that comes off, the usable material that comes off a building into the new one. For them, the new one means all new, and an old agency comes and they do a kabadi wala kind of a job on it. So that has been our process, unlike the European models where they would not mind, putting a story above an old one or using some of the older material and having some sense of continuity in terms of the elements, if not the spaces. So that kind of a maturity is yet to come upon our, developer and builder class. In Ahmedabad, they've tried to some extent where they've tried to integrate some of the builders and promoters into this whole exercise and make them look at what we are talking about. So I think more than the result that is actually achieved by these things and the desirable results that we feel should be achieved, one has to look at the processes, the various agencies that are an impediment in the whole process, and how can an architect or urban designer or a building industry as a whole, including the development authorities, uh, look in one direction, because the problem today is that they're not all looking in the same direction. They're all looking at different directions. And what is the value in looking at it collectively, in that direction is what probably should be agreed upon first as the first premise of the whole argument. Otherwise, you will tend to end up fighting with each other and achieving very diverse results. You might find the odd Sarkar Wada, being completely dismantled and then put together like the state archaeology is doing, which obviously is, in my opinion, not a very appropriate interpretation of conservation. There is what you get, as a result of all that. So our way of looking at neighborhoods, our way of looking at the people who inhabit them, and the desirable factors, that go into it. For example, this I always give this example of which they started off in Kalyan, where they asked about 100 residents of the town to compile their own family histories. And after they compiled those, they asked them to contribute 500 rupees each to publish a book on those family histories, which finally led to a realization that the whole town's history is actually a combined history of all these 100-odd families. And then there was a very participative and collective kind of exercise that went into it. So more innovative ways of survey, of analysis, of motivation of the public, I think they are all required here, because like Professor A.G.K. Menon says that like the IPL is one solution that we found, in cricket. Maybe in urban development, or more so in here urban conservation, we need to find our own solutions, which work in the Indian context, because the Indian old city is much more complex than the European town or the European village. And those complexities should be understood and attributed and given due allowance in this whole process of development. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Do any of the other panelists have any closing comments before we move on to the question and answer round of the overall thing? The other two people, I think Hemant Verma and Samruddhi Mangi, they are not present right now. So we just have two which we have discussed. Yeah. So can we move on to the question and answer round? Over. Yeah. I like Sanaya Vandewala to please take over.
Hi, thanks, Apurva. And thank you all the students participating. If all the students are present with us, if they can turn on their cameras, and this can be a good opportunity for any other guest, if they wish to address, they can type their questions in the chat with a question or a particular comment to either of the panelists or the faculty discussants or the students. And if the panelists would like to give you a closing remarks on the overall part of the theme or anything particular they would like to add here, and also all the discussants, faculty discussants as well. Kiran sir, Tapas, Vidya ma'am, anybody would like to add anything, closing remarks?
I just want to commend the effort. The exhibition link is really lovely. The virtual exhibition link is fantastic, and I want to congratulate the team for putting this together. I really enjoyed looking at all the projects. The three themes and the selection of the projects has been lovely. And I want to definitely congratulate all of the student participants that had sent in their entries, as well as the selected ones that offered room for such wonderful discussion today. All of you have done really amazing work, but definitely the work is not complete. I guess our work as urban designers will never be complete for that matter. It's only from that perspective that I'm saying that, not that your thesis projects are not complete. But I hope that you will sort of continue on these lines, because I think these lines of inquiry are very valid, each one of your lines of inquiry that you have chosen. And I would encourage that you try and see if you can further develop the projects beyond the scope of the thesis. It would be a valuable learning addition to your own selves, and for you to push the boundary on these very pertinent topics. All of them are very, very pertinent topics for urbanism today in our cities. So just want to congratulate the entire team putting this together, the students, my co-panelists. I think it's been a lovely session this morning.
Yeah, I think very well said, Vidya. I think you're echoing most of our sentiments. And I remember some of the comments that I had got when I was in the place of these students. And it was again Professor A.G.K. Menon, who is now our chairman of the Conservation Architects Community of India, a newly formed community. And he had said that these theses, these studies are actually ways of building up convictions about what change should be brought about in the environment around us, and what are the tools that are available with us to bring about such a change. And that stuck in my mind. It's there even after 35 years today. And my whole career is built around trying to find one's feet in the new urban context around them in a practical world. I don't deny the importance of the academic world here, but it is also important that activism, the new kind of professional, is a combination of academics and activism, and some of the lessons that one draws from across these. Of course, I also echo your sentiments in trying to congratulate the faculties and the students who took the pains to create these wonderful drawings that they have. And we must evolve all these to make our language much more effective, much more communicative, and see that the people who matter understand this, and the change is brought about as a result of all of this. So thank you, all of you, for participating. And thank you, Taposh, also, and Vidya, and so many others, who have put together this effort this morning. I also enjoyed it thoroughly. Thanks.
Yeah, I just, as a concluding remark, as sharing the same sentiment with my fellow panelists. It's been a wonderful sort of thought-provoking session. Very interesting. I just was thinking. I mean, saw some wonderful drawings. We are talking about drawings, maps, and all that. But probably the most influential book in urban writing doesn't have a single drawing. Death and Life of Great American Cities doesn't have a single drawing. So there are different ways. I'm not saying that avoid, but there are various ways of expressing our sentiments. So I was I suddenly and also I think it's very important that we congratulate the students because I think all these theses, all these works were done during the pandemic, right? Yeah, so that's a very, very special thing. As much as we would like to think that we are sort of stunted, we are being stunted by the pandemic, we see wonderful thought-provoking work. I think it's also probably looking inward sometimes helps instead of speaking constantly to an audience. So sometimes it really helps to be silent. So I think the students in their own secluded spaces and in their own spaces have really sort of done a lot of soul searching. We see that in all the works, and there have been a lot of sort of ownership and engagement with the works, because I think the role of which I really believe, that role of the mentors also will have to be redefined, I think, when we are looking at this pandemic, and during this entire phase of the pandemic in isolation, when the students have worked and when they produce at all levels, not only at this graduate level, but at all levels in schools, in other uh, you know knowledge construction areas. We have seen students doing a lot of things on their own, and to a large extent. So I think that's also very important. So we come out of the pandemic hopefully with a sort of a renewed zeal, and can't sort of say enough of this soul searching processes. So I think it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Okay, thank you so much for all your encouraging words. I'm sure the students are going to, like you said, this is not the end of the research or the understanding that urban requires, and hopefully they will continue this kind of endeavor in their practices, because this is the graduating batch, and they are going to get their convocation ceremony today evening. So good luck to all the students. I would like to end this session with a vote of thanks, and let me begin by first thanking our esteemed panelists, Vidya Mohan Kumar, Tapas Mitra, and Kiran Kalamdani. We are quite happy the fact that you've given us your valuable time, shared your opinions and comments with the students, the entire engagement for the 2 hours. Thank you very much for giving us that time. I would also like to thank all the student participation from all the colleges. This would not have been possible without the work that the students put in. And I mean, even though the master's is, the thesis is only just 1 semester, they have kind of been preparing for the 2 years. So, this is the hard work, that the process that goes throughout those 2 years. I would also like to thank 3 Krvia discussants that were there with us today, Apurva, Aradhna, and Shuchi. Thank you so much. Also, a vote of thanks to Janella and the entire exhibition team for putting up such a great exhibition. Like Vidya rightly mentioned, it was really nice to see the entire exhibition put up. The event organizing team as well, because this has been like a 2-day event, or several smaller events as part of the larger 2-day annual event for us. All the attendees who have been present and listening into, also for making this event a success. And finally, our director, Manoj Parmar, and Dean Masters, Ainsley Lewis, for always encouraging such initiatives. I think it's very important students get this opportunity, to present their work and have a discussion on various platforms with practitioners, academicians from the field. I think this engagement is very necessary, and especially in this time of pandemic, hopefully, which we are coming out of now. And eventually, maybe next year, we will see all of you guys and more of you present within our campuses, hopefully, and then we can have another sort of engagement. So thank you very much, everybody. And I'll be hopefully seeing all the students at their convocation ceremony. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks a lot, Vidya.
Thanks,
Vidya.
Thank you so much.
Tapas and Kiran.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.